the transfer portal being open while you guys are still playing, what's the challenges that are presented, and how do you shift your staff to accommodate?
Yeah, you know, we thankfully we have more coaches now, and that makes a big difference so that we can divide and conquer a little bit more. But, you know, I think there's two sides of this, and I saw an interview with Bruce Pearl recently, and talking about how, yes, it's very inconvenient, it's very difficult, but also that having the kids be able to pursue what their next steps are is important. And I really did pause when he said that and think about the majority of the numbers, right? We are very fortunate this year. We don't have a lot of space, so it actually has not been very difficult for us at all, because we have the potentially to have almost our whole roster return. But from a global perspective, I think there's two challenges. One is what is best for the student athletes and what is best for our game. And the part that concerned me a little bit about the game part is how quickly coaches were trying to, or athletic departments were trying to fill coaching positions so that they had people in place during for the transfer portal opening. And I think that has been an unintended consequence of the date, which is really difficult. So now you have assistant coaches leaving in the middle of the tournament. You've got, on top of everything else we're doing, I have people calling about, your coaches and are they interested in jobs and things like that. So somehow to find a marriage of like, okay, what is best for the student athletes? I think the bottom line is if you're in the Sweet 16 or beyond and you need a transfer situation, there's enough people that you can accommodate. Is it convenient? No. Is it hard? Yes. But you can do it. And especially since we're in the minority, there's only 16 teams left that are affected in that way. But I do think the whole thing about how it affected the coaching carousel, I think that's worth a second look, because that has been a major distraction. And when that's a distraction, it affects the student athlete experience. And so I think that's something we got to look at.
Take our next question up in the front. Cassandra, can you raise your hand so I can get it to you?
Cassandra Negley, Yahoo Sports. You've often talked about being an uncommon coach, and you mentioned it yesterday at the Naismith ceremony, having uncommon players. I know there's the uncommonness of UCLA being in its first NCAA Final Four, but I'm just curious, what is uncommon about this team that got you here?
I think it's the hardest working team that I've ever been a part of, top to bottom. I have to kick them out all the time of the gym. They want more. They're incredibly hardworking, and I have to give that credit to Kiki Rice. She has set a cultural standard of work that is contagious and pervasive. And she deserves so much credit in that. I think what else is uncommon of this group is so many players. I have never had a roster this star-studded. And it's uncommon to have this many stars be willing to give up individual things for a more powerful collective thing. And those would be probably the two most uncommon things about this particular team.
I'm going to move to our right, Doug, and then we'll come back over. I have a list going.
You're good.
Hey, Corey.
Hi,
Doug
Doug.
Feinberg, the AP. I was hoping you could walk us through a little bit your relationship with Gino, because I remember you went to watch practices probably close to a decade ago now, I think.
13 years ago.
Just how that all happened, and now that you're playing them on the game's biggest stages, how great it was to be able to learn from the best.
Not only was it, so when my first year at UCLA, we weren't in the NCAA tournament. And so I had a little more time on my hands after the season was over. And I'm like, what a unique opportunity. I wonder if people would let me watch them, practice. And so I called Muffet McGraw, and I called, Coach Auriemma, and asked if I could come and watch. And so I spent, I think the first and second rounds, I spent watching Notre Dame, their prep, and then I went to Connecticut and spent 4 days there and watched them practice and prepare. And, it was just tremendous. And then the next year in October, I brought my entire staff out to watch him practice. And, he's a master teacher. He's really, really, he's done it in a style of play that I really enjoy, just personally, especially on the offensive end. end, and trying to think about, as a young, first year at that point, head coach, what was that going to look like for me? And so to have that time where, and it wasn't just Coach Auriemma, CD and their assistant coaches, I mean, their whole program, just letting someone in the middle of the NCAA tournament and learn, I think it's a huge credit to them. And so there used to be a joke that whether I was at UC Santa Barbara or at Florida State or then at UCLA, every year we ended up in their bracket. So that got a little old because they were really good. But at the same time, I just think when people who have set the standard of the game are willing to reach back and teach somebody else, it goes a long way.
We'll stay on our right-hand side. If you can come up one more in the brown.
Hi, great. Emily Adams, Hartford Current. You worked with both Paige and AZ at the USA basketball level. Just curious what you remember about them, working with them at that age, and how you've seen them develop now as you're scouting them for a Final Four.
Yeah, it's funny. When we were in Thailand for the U19 World Cup with Paige, she happened to be my next-door neighbor the entire time for 3 weeks in Thailand. And so her and Celeste Taylor, I remember it, and it would always be, we'd joke about what the pregame playlist was going to be, and thankfully we both really like gospel music, so that was usually the choice. And Paige has just got an incredible charisma. She, made the pass. I mean, I think to me, she's an incredibly most efficient scorer of all those things, but her elite skill in my mind that I love the most is watching her vision and her passing. It's just amazing. And we were in a position in the gold medal game that she needed to make the pass for us to have a chance to send it to overtime, and she made the pass and made the play and sent us on. And she's an incredible player. She's an even better teammate. And just was great to have that experience with her. Lots of respect and admiration. AZ, it's interesting that I had this experience with Lauren too, and those are probably the two that they carried me a little bit. So when I coached them, my dad died when I was on the trip with USA Basketball, and those two kids, I remember the circle. I remember sitting there and telling them, like, this is going on. I'm okay, but this is happening. And their response to me was just tremendous. And I had recruited them both. They both turned me down. But AZ, she just has this, she has incredible work ethic. She's an elite player. She has a very tender heart. And I was the beneficiary of that on that trip, and I will be forever grateful.
We're going to move to our left in the plaid, and then we'll go to the back to the black. I know I have the blue. Again, we're moving through.
Hey,
When
Coach.
we're moving.
Misha Jones here with Rising Media Stars once again. So I want to take us back in time. You've been at UCLA since 2011. You were under 500 that first season, but if you had to go back knowing how everything has unfolded since then, what is the advice you give that version of Corey Close, and what do you tell coaches who want to make that first gig stick?
Good question. I think that don't try to be all things to all people. Know what your lane is and how you operate best, and be authentic to that. That's where the whole uncommon thing came from, is that I knew I didn't want to do it like everybody else. But it was hard. I was insecure at times. Can I really get this done? Could this really work? And so, but I think anything other than that would have been inauthentic, and it would have been, I wouldn't have had the joy or the meaning that, or honestly, to be able to sustain, because I really wouldn't have believed in it at the deepest levels, right? The thing that I would say, the biggest thing is who you surround yourself. Show me the 5 closest people to a new head coach in the program, and I will show you what their level of success will be. And I got a lot of things wrong, but the one thing I got right is the people I surrounded myself with. Loyalty, character, trust. I had so many people, well, you need this. You've been gone from California this long. You need this person. You need this. Telling me what I needed. But I knew I needed trustworthy people of integrity, high character, hardworking. I knew that I needed someone, all of them, I wanted them to be able to develop talent. I wanted them to build authentic relationships, and I wanted them to be able to recruit. And everything else, I figured if those things were in place and they were high character people, we'd be okay.
Kareem, please proceed.
Hey, Corey. Kareem Copeland from Washington Post. Just quickie, couple things that you have to take care of tomorrow to be successful and to advance.
A couple things. I think that one of the reasons I chose to learn from Coach Auriemma is that he doesn't teach just a bunch of plays. He teaches and equips his players to make plays and to read defenses. So when you're scouting them, the amount of there's not a lot of predictability because they're really good at read and react, and it's a very high basketball IQ team. And so I think the challenges is all the different ways they create open threes and the efficiency in which to do it. So the number one thing is that we've got to do defensively is to limit their three-point attempt rate, and it's very clear in the analytics when their three-point attempt rate is up, they win. And when they defensive rebound, they win. Those are the two biggest win-loss statistics that determine their success from an analytics perspective. And so our challenge is going to be to try to limit that attempt rate and at least quality ones. And then the other thing that they do is they use players as you try to extend to do that, to cut behind you. And so to be able to defend back cuts is really important because that's the counter when you take away threes. So those on the defensive end. And then we have to figure out how we can play through the paint, and not just with Lauren Betts, but to do that because that's how we're built, and shoot our threes after paint touches and not fall in love with them too early. But the more stops we get, the more we're able to do that in transition. So that'll be a huge key for us playing through the paint on the offensive end. Ball movement and paint touches are the two biggest indicators for us being successful versus them on the offensive end.
Coach, we're going to move to our right. If you could raise your hand in the green.
Cora Hall with USA Today. You're going up against a UConn program that's making their 24th appearance. It's your program's first. A lot of people might think that's an advantage for UConn in being here before, but do you feel like there's an advantage on your side of your team, doing something this program's never done before and that kind of different pressure? Just kind of what's that like from your perspective?
I think it's just, not only is every team different in terms of their talent base and strengths and weaknesses, but their makeup internally is different. And I can't speak to theirs. Obviously their record here speaks for itself. But one of the coolest parts about coaching this team for UCLA is that they haven't been surprised. They really have prepared to win step by step, starting way back when we played South Carolina at home, and we started out just not a very confident team and just earned it little by little. And so I just think this is that next hurdle, right? So we're not preparing to be here, we're preparing to win. And we're trying to prepare in such a way that we have the confidence to do so. Is it an advantage of being here multiple times? I would say, yeah, it is, probably. But there's different kinds of advantages on all parts of this. So our job, I can't control that. So my job is to not give my energy to that at all.
Take our final question in the back, in the blue shirt, if you could raise your hand.
Andrea Adelson with ESPN.com. Corey, as a follow-up to that, you're the #1 overall seed, yet everyone's talking about UConn.
Doesn't seem that way, does it?
That's my question. Does it feel like you guys are a little bit of an underdog heading into this game, even though you are the #1 overall seed?
Yes, it does. But honestly, it has sort of all year. And I think we've benefited from that, honestly, that we spent more time as #1 in the country all year long. And we were the most non-talked about #1 team in history. But I can't complain about that because I think it allowed our team to stay focused on the right things. And so, I do think that's sort of been the case, but I do know that the #1 overall seed stays in the nicest hotel, and that is true. So that is really beneficial right across the street. But I think that the reality is that, I love the coverage of our sport. So if you want to talk about whoever you want, go ahead. It's going to all shake out there about who shows up to perform, who plays their best when their best is needed. And we both have two really, really good teams. Also a credit to them. I think they have been playing their best basketball in the last, 6 weeks of the season. And I saw a real turn in them during that time. So they've earned some of that. And obviously their history. But this is this year's UConn team, not the last 10 years plus or 20 years of UConn teams. And this is our UCLA team. And I have a lot of confidence, both mentally and physically and tactically, in this UCLA team. And I think it's going to be a great battle.
Coach, I want to thank you for your time today. Best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Just a reminder for those